Imagine you put $100 in a drawer and forget about it for 10 years. When you open that drawer again, the bills look exactly the same, but they buy noticeably less. That quiet shrinking of what your money can purchase is called inflation, and it happens almost everywhere, almost all the time. In the United States, prices roughly doubled over about the 4 decades from 1985 to 2025, which means $1 from the mid-80s buys less than half of what it used to. Nobody reached into your drawer, nobody stole anything, yet the money still lost value. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that works and who tends to come out ahead. Inflation is simply a general rise in the prices of goods and services over time, which lowers the purchasing power of each unit of money. In the United States, the most widely cited measure is the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, published monthly by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Bureau builds a fixed basket of things households actually buy: groceries, gasoline, rent, healthcare, haircuts, and tracks what that basket costs month after month. Housing costs alone are the single largest component, which is why rent surges hit the index so hard. The Federal Reserve aims for inflation of 2% per year, a target it adopted in January 2012. But an important nuance: the Fed's official goal is measured using a slightly different gauge, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, or PCE, not the CPI. So the headline numbers you see in the news are real and they matter, but they are not the exact figure the Fed is targeting. Economists usually point to 3 engines that push prices up. The first is demand pull inflation. When people and businesses want to buy more than the economy can produce, sellers raise prices, too much money chasing too few goods. The second is cost push inflation. When the cost of making things rises, a jump in oil prices, a shortage of key parts, producers pass those higher costs on to buyers. A surge in crude oil is the classic example because it raises the cost of manufacturing, shipping, and heating across the whole economy at once. The third, and the deepest, is growth in the money supply. If the amount of money circulating expands much faster than the amount of goods and services available, each dollar tends to be worth less. These forces often work together, and the 2021 to 2023 episode is a textbook case of all 3 arriving at once. Inflation is not neutral. It quietly moves wealth from one group to another. Borrowers with fixed-rate debt tend to benefit. They repay loans with dollars that are worth less than the ones they borrowed. A homeowner who locked in a 30-year fixed mortgage in 2019 is repaying it with dollars that have, in real terms, shrunk. Their debt is effectively lighter. On the losing side are savers holding cash in low-interest accounts, whose purchasing power erodes year after year, and people on fixed incomes, like retirees on a pension that isn't indexed to prices. There's also a subtler order of arrival effect named after the 18th century economist Richard Cantillon. Whoever receives new money first, banks, financial institutions, governments, borrowers with credit access, can spend it before prices have risen, while ordinary households receive it last, after prices have already climbed. One precision point, because honesty matters here. The direction of this redistribution is well established, but the magnitude in any specific episode is contested and hard to measure. Treat it as a well-documented direction, not a precise number. If inflation redistributes wealth and erodes savings, why not just target 0? The answer is that a little inflation is considered healthier than none. Mild, predictable price rises give central banks room to cut interest rates during a downturn. You can't cut far below 0 without serious distortions. They also reduce the risk of deflation. When prices fall, consumers delay purchases and businesses cut investment, which pushes prices lower still, which cuts wages. The trapped Japan spent much of the 1990s and 2000s trying to escape. The main lever central banks use is the short-term interest rate, and what makes it genuinely difficult is the lag. Rate changes typically take 6 months to a year or more to fully work through the economy. Central bankers are steering a large ship that responds slowly to the wheel, while reading a dashboard that shows where they've been rather than where they are going. The 2021 to 2023 inflation surge is the clearest modern example of all three engines firing at once. Starting in 2020, governments and central banks pumped enormous support into economies during the pandemic. In the United States, the M2 money supply grew by roughly 40% in about 2 years, one of the fastest expansions on record. At the same time, global supply chains seized up. Factories closed, shipping containers piled up in the wrong places, semiconductor shortages rippled through entire industries. Then in February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine and energy markets convulsed. The result? United States consumer prices rose 9.1% over the 12 months ending June 2022, the largest annual jump in about 4 decades. With the energy component alone up more than 40%. The Fed responded with one of the fastest tightening cycles in decades. And by December 2023, inflation had cooled to 3.4%. Here is that surge drawn out. For years, United States inflation sat quietly around 1 to 2%. Then the pandemic money, the supply shock, and the energy shock stacked on top of each other, and the line rocketed upward to 7% by the end of 2021, and a peak of 9.1% in the summer of 2022, the highest in roughly 40 years. Then, as the Fed hiked aggressively and supply chains healed, it fell back toward 3%. Notice the shape: a violent spike followed by a fast descent. That descent is the sound of the most aggressive interest rate campaign in a generation actually working. And this is the deepest engine of the three. M2 is a broad measure of the money circulating in the economy. Look what happened to it starting in 2020. It jumped from about $15 trillion to nearly $22 trillion in roughly 2 years. A 40% expansion, one of the fastest in American history. When the quantity of money grows far faster than the quantity of goods that money can buy, the price of everything tends to rise to fill the gap. This single line is why many economists argue the inflation that followed was not an accident, and not only a supply story. It was, in large part, a monetary one. Normal inflation of a few percent is a slow leak. Hyperinflation is an explosion. And history offers 3 case studies. Weimar Germany in 1923 is the archetype. Crushed by war debt and reparations, the government printed money until the currency collapsed, and by November the exchange rate reached roughly 4.2 trillion marks to $1 United States dollar. Workers were paid twice a day so they could spend before the afternoon price rise wiped out the morning's wages. Zimbabwe in 2008 went further. Economists Hanke and Kwok estimated the peak annual rate at around 89 sextillion%. Their academic estimate, since the government had stopped publishing real data, with prices roughly doubling every single day. And Venezuela, after oil prices collapsed in 2014, printed money until inflation reached, by the IMF's estimates, hundreds of thousands of percent by 2018. The exact figures are disputed. The common thread is not. Governments printing money without restraint to cover what they couldn't fund honestly. Because inflation erodes idle cash, people try to hold things that keep pace with, or outrun, rising prices. Stocks and real estate have historically served as partial hedges, since companies can often raise prices and property tends to hold its real value. The United States Treasury offers an instrument built specifically for this: Treasury Inflation-Protected Securities, or TIPS, whose principal adjusts upward with the Consumer Price Index, making the protection contractual rather than hoped for. Gold holds its purchasing power over very long horizons, though over shorter periods its record is mixed. Cryptocurrencies are pitched as a modern scarcity-based store of value, but their volatility is so large relative to the slow erosion inflation, represents that the evidence for them as a reliable hedge is, honestly, still ambiguous. For ordinary workers, the practical defenses are simpler: cost of living raises, and not letting cash sit in accounts paying less than inflation. And at the national level, the most powerful protection of all is a credible, independent central bank. Because once people expect prices to keep rising and act on it, they cause the very inflation they feared. So how does inflation really work, and who actually benefits? At its core, inflation is what happens when money grows faster than the goods it can buy. It is not random, and it is never neutral. It tends to reward borrowers, asset owners, and those closest to newly created money, while it quietly taxes savers, people on fixed incomes, and anyone holding cash. A small, steady dose is a normal feature of a healthy economy. The danger comes when it spirals beyond what the system can absorb, as it did in Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe and Venezuela, and far more mildly across the developed world in 2021 and 2022. The honest takeaway is this: inflation isn't a villain or a hero, but a powerful redistributive force that moves value constantly and silently. The more you understand how it works, the better you can see which side of the transfer you're standing on. Thanks for watching. The sources are linked below, so go verify the numbers yourself and subscribe for more. This report was built from data and reporting by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Federal Reserve, the International Monetary Fund, the U.S. Treasury, and others. Chart figures come from the BLS Consumer Price Index and the Federal Reserve's M2 Money Supply Series. Full sources are in the description, so you can check every number yourself. Thanks again for watching.